Let us continue our reading of Santa Ana, the people, the pueblo, and the history of Tamaya. It is a windy day, and there are, I believe, baseball players in the park. So if you hear anything in the background, that is what that is. We may not finish the whole chapter. My goal is to just make these videos 10 minutes each. So it's either 10-minute mark or the first chapter, whichever comes first. Chapter 1. The Tamaya May before Tamaya. Long ago, the tradition says, the Hanu, the people, came into this world from the underworld. They emerged at Shipapu, a place north and west of the land that would come to be known as Tamaya. This upper world, they soon saw, was abundant. When they came into this world, their religious leaders spoke to them of the beauty of the land and the sky, and what they were to do. The people were to travel over the earth until they found the place that suited them best. There they would make their homes. He gave them instructions for the journey. When he had finished, he blessed all those who chose to remain in the upper world, and the Hanu set out on their journey. They traveled for a long time, always heading south. Though they passed through many fine lands, they did not settle in any of them. When they grew hungry, the people stopped to gather the nourishment earth provided for them: deer and antelope, rabbits, turkeys, buffalo, plants of many kinds, and clear, cool water. As soon as the Hanu had renewed their energy, they traveled on as they had been instructed. In this way they journeyed, pausing only long enough to regain their strength, until at last they reached Kashe Ka'atriti White House. There, after many years of traveling, they stopped to settle for the first time. Throughout the journey to Kashi Ka'atriti, the Hanu had been governed by the instructions of their religious leader. Now, under his direction, the people set up a larger system of government, which would give order to their lives as they continued their journey, and much later, when they settled at Tamaya. At the head of this government was the Tiyamuni Shike, who was responsible for deciding all matters of importance to the people. To see that his decisions were carried out and that all of the things needed for religious ceremonies were done, the Tiyamune appointed a Mase Wei, war chief, and Uye Ewi, assistant war chief, and a number of Kuwechani aides. For that time on, the Tiyamune, guided by spiritual inspiration and a council of advisors, was to lead the Hanu. While the Hanu journeyed, the earth had provided richly for them. Abundant game and the wild plants along the route had met the people's needs. But when they ended their journey, they would no longer rely on what the earth offered them. For the Hanu were a farming people. Wherever they settled, they planted fields of maize, beans, and squash. For a farming people, this upper land could be harsh. Without hard work, they would have no harvest, for many places had no water, and untended seeds would wither in the dry ground. When they chose a place to settle, the Hanu had to find a source of water for their crops. Sometimes a river or stream promised a steady supply of water, but often there was no river, or only a small stream that would dry up during the summer when the seedlings most needed water. Rainfall might supply that water, but rain in this land was sparse and unpredictable. To ensure a supply of water for their crops, the Hanu learned to plant their seeds above underground springs, where water would seep up to nourish the young plants. They grew skilled at constructing check dams to capture rainfall and runoff and direct the scarce water to the crops. In the driest summers, the people carried spring water in clay jars to the parched fields. At Kashe Ka'atriti, their first settlement, the Hanu built the foundations of their way of life in the upper world. But they were not to remain at Kashe Ka'atriti, for this was not their homeland. Eventually, the time came for them to move on, and they headed south and east once again. After traveling for a long time, they reached the southern slope of the Sandia Mountains. There, in the high valley west of the San Pedro Arroyo, they settled in the village of Pak'u. This village, surrounded by mountain peaks, had adobe buildings around a central plaza. As the village grew, more buildings, made first of adobe and later of stone, were added on the west side, leaving the flat lands on the eastern edge of the village free for farming. The regions around Pak'u was rich in resources. A spring provided a dependable supply of water. High in the mountains, the hunters could find deer, elk, bear, and bighorn sheep. Bison and pronghorn antelope roamed the valleys and basins. Squirrels, rabbits, chipmunks, mice, bats, and other small animals were abundant. Pinon, oak, yucca, cactus, and berries grew near the village. The mountains nearby held deposits of lead, turquoise, mica, and other minerals. Could be mica, but this is the map. Again, this book can be bought at the Santa Ana Pueblo gift shop, rented or borrowed from the Albuquerque libraries, or purchased in the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center store. I believe there's also online options. Here is another map. This is sideways, but I can't get it in frame the other way. With these resources, the people of Pak'u could make all that they needed. The leaves and fiber of yucca and other plants were woven into sandals, baskets, and mats. Wild plants yielded fruits, nuts, greens, and berries for the people's diet. Animals provided both food and a supply of bone that would be used to make a variety of essential tools. Artisans carved and polished the bone to fashion handles, scrapers, punches, and fine awls. Bone could also be worked to make beads and ornaments, game pieces, and musical instruments such as flutes, whistles, and rasps. Using clay tampered with mica, sand, or schist, the potters of Pak'u made both ornate jars, canteens, bowls, and dippers, and undecorated cooking pots, jars, bowls, and pitchers. At first, the potters used black carbon paint on a white or gray slip to decorate their wares. Then, not long after Pak-u was founded, some potters began to create a red or red-orange pottery, with designs applied in a black glaze paint. Other potters applied this dark glaze to a whitish or yellow slip. The craftsmen, farmers, and potters of Pak-u were not isolated. Just to the south, in the Sandia Mountains, lay the villages later known as Tijeras and San Antonito. To the east were the villages of the Gallisto Basin. The settlements of the Rio Grande were not far away. The people of Pak-u met these neighbors, and perhaps more distant ones as well, for networks of trade and giving brought goods from remote lands to the Sandia village. Although Pak-u was far from any ocean, its residents made beads and ornaments from the seashells of western Mexico. The people had pottery made by their neighbors to the west, south, and east. Their contacts may well have reached as far as the plains. For more than a century, the settlement of Pak-u prospered. The people added new rooms of stone and masonry to the village. Farmers tended their crops in fields on the flats east of the town. Not all of the Hanu remained at Pak-u during this time, however. The tradition recalls that when the people reached Pak-u, they divided into two groups. One group settled in the village on the east slope of the Sandias, while the other set out on a journey that would take them in a large circle to the west before they returned to Pak-u. This is where we will stop for now, and next reading will complete the first chapter. Thank you for joining me.